praise of inefficiency. Should we serve the economy or should the economy serve us? This is a really fundamental question. What stimulated my thinking about this was a short article that I saw, or actually I think Louise found it on the Drudge Report, that the vice president of marketing at Trader Joe's, you know, the retail chain, Tara Miller is her name, she's the VP marketing, announced on the store's podcast, which is called Inside Trader Joe's, that they will not be installing self-checkout machines in their stores. And she said that the reason why is because they want to continue supporting employment in the communities where their stores operate. The exact statement that she made is, the bottom line here is that our people remain our most valued resource, while other retailers are cutting staff and adding things like self-checkout, curbside pickup, and outsourcing delivery options. We are hiring more crew, and we continue to do that. Good on them. And, you know, this whole drive for efficiency somehow has become, well, not somehow, it's the result of the Reagan Revolution, has become a kind of a neo-religion in American business, in the American business community, and among legislators, particularly Republican legislators, you know, across the nation. This idea, I think it comes out of neoliberalism. I mean, this goes, you know, as the Reagan administration, so many of the things that they did are just, you know, kind of basic Milton Friedman, you know, Hayek and Mises 101. But the essential core of it, the core premise of corporations should always seek to be more efficient no matter what, no matter the impact on the community, no matter the impact on the employees, no matter the impact on the consumers. As long as the corporation can make more money, that's the only important thing. Don't you know that there was a Michigan Supreme Court ruling about this back in the day when Horace Dodge sued Henry Ford, and, you know, et cetera. There's a whole rant associated with this. And it's wrong. But it's pretty much the law right now. And it is that profit should be the most important consideration that any corporation has. And you know, it kind of started out that way in the 80s with Reagan, and now it's become profit should be basically the only consideration a corporation has. And we see this with share buybacks, which used to be criminal. They used to be considered criminal stock manipulation before the Reagan administration. We see this with, well, we see it right, you know, and mergers and acquisitions, another big one. In 1983, Ronald Reagan instructed the Federal Trade Commission, the Department of Justice, and there was one other agency. He instructed them to stop enforcing the nation's antitrust laws. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, the Clayton Antitrust Act of 1913, I think it was, maybe 1914, and the Hart-Taft-Robino, I think it is, law of the 1970s. And when they stopped enforcing those laws, what happened was, in short order, you had giant corporations merging with each other or swallowing whole medium and small companies, medium-sized and small-sized companies, and becoming larger and larger and larger until we reached, in the 2000s, in the early 2000s, what I refer to as the cancer stage of capitalism, which is where it basically has metastasized and eaten the economy. I mean, think about this. We had a caller yesterday, and I tipped my hat to that caller in near Houghton, Michigan. And thanks again for that tip, because I added it into my article after I went home yesterday and wrote this after I got off the air, that Walmart is, you know, after wiping out the local businesses in Houghton, they're now saying that their property taxes, they should be taxed at the same rate as the dark stores, as these stores that they've killed off. In other words, you know, at a much lower property tax rate. This is after the city literally gave them the land that they built on and gave them a tax abatement and built roads for them and put in utilities for them, all at the city's own expense. And now, you know, the city's going to have to cut back on their education budget and service to veterans and you know, the fire and police departments and everything, because Walmart is fighting this. It's a $500 billion corporation, you know, that's owned in large part by the wealthiest family on the planet. And they're trying to, you know, take down this town, all to increase profits, and profits being the reflection of efficiency. My argument is that a corporation should not just have an obligation to its own bottom line. It should also have an obligation to its community. It should have an obligation to its customers. It should have an obligation to its employees, and it should have an obligation to the nation as a whole, to its impact overall on society. And all of those things should be things that CEOs are putting into the equation along with profits. But it's going to require, some substantial changes in the ways that our laws work. I mean, we need to go back to enforcing our antitrust laws, for example. We need to break up some of these large companies. And I would point out, to those people who say, oh, no, you want to break, and by the way, before I get to that, just another example of this, and I use this point in my article. Broadband service costs about half of what it costs in the United States, in pretty much every other developed country in the world, anywhere from 25 to 50% of what you and I pay here in the United States. I mean, you can get high-speed internet in France for $15 a month. You cannot do that here in the United States. I'm talking unlimited high-speed broadband. You can get high-speed broadband brought into your house along with cable TV brought into your house with over 100 channels, along with 2 cell phones with separate numbers and unlimited phone use and unlimited cell data usage for $90 in France right now, a month. I mean, you can hardly just get broadband for that in America. Why is this? Because as a consequence of Reagan stopping the enforcement of the antitrust laws in 1983, we now have every major industry in the United States controlled by between 3 and 5 corporations, which is what's called an oligopoly. So we need to bring back the antitrust laws, and we need to start enforcing them. They are still on the books, although the Supreme Court has taken some pretty big bites out of them since the Reagan era. They're still on the books. And I'm actually pleased to see that there have been a few cases recently where the Biden administration, they're talking about looking at big tech using the antitrust laws. Now, they were talking about it a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago. I haven't heard anything more. I'm guessing that they just stopped talking about it because the heavy foot of the lobbyists came down because, of course, the Supreme Court, legalized bribery. But it still is something that needs to be done. And for those people who say, oh, wait a minute, my 401k is invested in these big companies, I would point out that if you owned AT&T stock before the breakup, Richard Nixon initiated the breakup in 1974. It was finished in 1984 by Ronald Reagan. Interestingly, 2 Republican presidents. If you owned 1 share of AT&T stock before the breakup, that became 6 shares of the Baby Bells plus the Bell Labs, what later became known as Lucent Technologies. You saw a substantial increase in the value of your investment as a result of the breakup. So everybody wins except AT&T. And arguably even AT&T wins because it's now 7 companies. But the CEO doesn't make as much money. And, that's pretty much it. But the CEOs are running the lobbying operations. So I'm just, I'm pointing this out and saying, we really need to go back to a time when we put people above profits. And people, communities, employees, customers, people were part of the equation that corporations had to consider when they were deciding exactly what they were going to do in the marketplace and in the political sphere as well.